I've never met Mark Zuckerberg, but would very much like to meet him. There's been a variety of reactions to this character in the States and internationally. In the States, a lot of the older generation kind of viewed the movie as a cautionary tale and viewed my character as somebody who is dangerous, a young person with too much power. Whereas the young people that we took it to colleges in the States viewed my character almost heroically. He was a pioneer and doing amazing things. And that's how I've come to view him as well. And as I do more publicity for this movie, which has been a lot over the last several weeks, I've developed an even greater affection for him in discussing him. To prepare for the role, I used Aaron Sorkin's wonderful script. He created an amazing character. He created several amazing characters. And also learned everything I could about the real person. I read every interview with him, and I transferred all of his interviews onto my iPod so I can listen to it on the way to work, as well as in between scenes. The movie had access to Mark Zuckerberg's college application to Harvard. In it, he writes a very eloquent essay about fencing with his friends. So I took fencing lessons to understand how he stood, because he has a very unique posture. When I took fencing lessons, I learned that that's how they teach you to stand. So I tried to understand as much as I could about the real person to play this version created by Aaron Sorkin.
Ma il fatto che lei parli così veloce è una caratteristica del personaggio, oppure lei parla così veloce nella realtà in generale o nei film?
This character from the first scene is speaking quicker than his mind works. Aaron created a character who can have 10 conversations at one time, which often creates a lot of problems for him. The girl in the opening scene is confounded by him. She can't understand what he's saying and breaks up with him. And all along the way, he's speaking more quickly than people are able to kind of absorb. It's been pretty strange. While we were making the movie, I think we didn't think too much about how they would react. And then as the movie was about to be released in the States and there was a lot of publicity, I think we felt a little concerned that it wouldn't be received well by the people who it's about. We've been pleasantly surprised to see that the reaction has been, for the most part, really positive. I think the person we were primarily concerned about was Mark, of course. But he did a very interesting thing. On October 1st, when the movie came out in the States, Mark rented out an entire movie theater in Palo Alto, California, and put his employees on a bus and took them to the theater and showed them the movie. Yeah, the kind of it's really well. Everybody at the company would see the movie on the weekend by themselves. So at least in this way, he's kind of in control of it. It's I think, a really clever thing to do. The kind of most interesting part of it for me, though, is that my cousin is an employee of Facebook and was on the bus at the movie theater and at the bar afterwards, where Mark Zuckerberg ordered apple teenies for all of his employees, which is the drink in the movie, the green martini. My cousin asked him about his reaction to the movie, and he's told my cousin to send me a text message saying that I did a good job. But that's kind of the only reaction I've received from Mark. Eduardo Saverin saw the movie, was overwhelmed with it, in a very positive way. The twins, the Winklevoss twins and Divya, have been at every screening, Paris, New York. They're very proud of their portrayal. And as you can see, as played by Armie Hammer and Max Minghella, they're presented beautifully. So we've been really pleased, and even more than pleased, relieved. The most frustrating part of acting in a movie is sitting in your trailer waiting for them to set up lights, kind of working up this terrible anticipation. and then getting 2 or 3 chances at it. 2 or 3 chances at something that you've prepared for months, have thought about, have gone to acting coaches for, has taken months to write, and then you get 20 minutes to do it. Whereas this experience was the opposite. You'd wait on set because it would take 20 minutes to set up the lights, and then you'd act for the next 2 hours, which means you get to experiment with different things. For example, the first scene of the movie, which is the 2 characters at the bar, we filmed that 99 times. And it was remarkable because it gave me the opportunity to figure out who my character is. We shot it. It was the first scene we shot. And so I was able to kind of experiment with Mark's level of emotional interest in other people. The character can be a bit detached emotionally and disengaged. And having that many opportunities to perform it gave me the ability to figure out how he reacts to other people. I've never had an experience like that on a movie. No one, since Stanley Kubrick, I think, works in this way. So all of the actors were so honored to have that opportunity.
Senta, ma però il film dice anche con molta forza e molta intelligenza anche un'altra cosa, che anche l'uomo più intelligente del mondo è completamente indifeso nel rancore, nei confronti del rancore e della frustrazione di essere rifiutato. Cioè di essere frustrato nei propri desideri, nelle proprie passioni, quando si è rifiutati altri. La storia di Zuckerberg anche non è la storia di una suprema intelligenza, è anche la storia di una grandissima frustrazione.
Yeah, that's right. I think one of the things that makes the character palatable is that by the end of the movie, you understand where he's coming from, and it's a place of loneliness. This is a character who goes to a party, stands in the corner, watches everybody else interact with each other, and doesn't feel comfortable interacting himself. And yet, because he's watched everybody interact with each other, when he goes home, he creates this incredible tool that perfectly reflects how other people want to interact. So it's entirely fitting that somebody who can't interact himself would have a greater insight into how other people want to connect with each other. But of course, one of the tragic ironies of the character is that the more power he gets and the more successful he becomes, the more alone he is. At the end of the movie, he's kind of desperately clicking to a friend, this girl, and he's entirely alone. He's amassed $1 billion and an amazing company that he started alone from nothing, and yet in many ways he's more alone than he was at the beginning. I think he just has difficulty interacting with other people in a way that makes both feel comfortable. I think he has trouble gauging the emotional experience of another person. When, for example, in the most dramatic scene, Eduardo comes to him and is smashing his computer and is asking him why he's done this terrible thing. I think it's one of the first times Mark is aware that his actions affect other people emotionally. In the first scene, the girl breaks up with him, and only several minutes after she breaks up with him is he aware that he's done something wrong, that he's been rude, and then he says, "I'm sorry, I mean it." But of course he doesn't, because he doesn't have that inside of him. He has, I think he just has trouble understanding other people's emotional experience, and in many ways has trouble understanding his own emotional experience. I think he's emotionally detached a bit. He feels superior as well as entirely insecure at the same time. I was in a movie about 7 years ago. That was the first movie I was in, and I went on Google as soon as it came out and looked up my name and saw just the most horrible things about the way I speak and look and everything that you could think to criticize me, which I've been denying my whole life on the internet. So, as you could imagine, I don't feel the need to contribute to that any further. So that's why I don't have a Facebook. Thank you. But your observation is very interesting that it began as this very exclusive thing. It started at Harvard, and it expanded to the best schools in the country. And now it's ultimately democratic. And I thought about that a lot, and thought about it through the character of Mark, and come to the conclusion that he's such a brilliant businessman that he would create the illusion of exclusivity when really what he was selling was something entirely democratic. It was just exclusive for the very brief beginning stage. It's what made Facebook succeed over MySpace and Friendster, which seemed too accessible and therefore less interesting. Facebook created an allure before it was accessible, and I think is therefore so alluring still.